Welcome back to the Manor. Julian McBain here, and I'm still out here hunting panleons. Why am I hunting panleons? Actually, what I have been doing is swunting, and I've actually been doing quite a bit of it lately. You know, I go through these periods of time when I want to do some low-key things, so I just come out here and I just swunt. When I'm on Calypso, I go to Club Royal, and we turret the big-ass, oh, what the hell are those snake-like things? I can't remember off the top of my head. But here we do panleons. We do panleons because they're low level and I can tank them without armor on. So okay. Gonna be chatting for a little while, but before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you'll get copies of the Modern Entropian and Personal Finance for Gamers for your troubles. Thank you for being to my patrons. I've got you in the credits. So, I've been thinking about the direction I want to go with the channel, and I've got a lot on my mind. In the meantime, of course, I'm going to continue to be doing this kind of more vlog format again, harkening back to the early days of the channel. But hopefully within the next couple weeks I'll have got those pieces put together. I did a full update in my last video. I'm not going to do that to you again. I don't think there's any point. But I wanted to let you know that I'm still figuring that whole piece out. That being said, I do want to talk about the Ludius algorithm a little bit and loots coming off of mobs. Because it occurs to me that, because I've told you all before, I keep a spreadsheet of all this, right? I know exactly how much money I have put in, how much I have gained or lost. And I find it interesting that I need to do like a full-on experiment where I'm totally cycling ammo for a while. Because I think I'm actually making a minor profit off of hunting these guys. Like, of course, when you swunt, as long as you're efficient about it, you know, you're not wearing armor, you're using a high-efficiency weapon, you're not overkilling too much. Although, from what I understand, overkilling doesn't cause too many problems anymore. Hang on, guys. Sorry, allergies are a bitch. I'm pretty sure you come out on top once you sell the sweat off, which would make sense. That's why swunting is pretty popular. Kind of. Okay, maybe not. But I've noticed that I appear to be having more advantages than disadvantages when swunting panleons. And there's a couple of contributing factors that I think I can find here. Contributing factor number one is the fact that we're on Cyrene. And that might sound like a cop-out, but it's not. See, Cyrene's loot table is actually better than Calypso's. Wow, that was a really good drop. Holy shit. It's almost 6 ped. That is 6. That's more than 6 ped. Wow. Cyrene's loot table is very good. Superior to most other planets other than Monria, in fact, and I would argue that Monria is the only planet that has a moon that has a better loot table because Monria has 0 taxes. Cyrene obviously does have at least something of a tax, but it's very, very minor. In fact, I'm sure it's lower than most of the owned land areas on Calypso. So you have the loot advantage there. When swunting, you have advantage number 2 that you get to draw the sweat out and it doesn't affect the Panleon's loot pool to any significant degree. Each of these level 3 Panleons only has 80 sweat, which is less than 1 peck of TT value. Which means I'm drawing out less than 1 peck of TT value, turning around and then hunting them. Allowing for the average loot of like 20 peck. Like we just got 17 there. Before that though we had 6 ped. Right, so it all averages out. It's not that much different to dollar cost averaging in the stock market or in buying crypto. And there's 25. See, so you draw the sweat out, you loot the mob, and I think over time you're actually gaining ground, especially if you're selling all of the loots on the auction house for a profit, which you should be. And I know that I personally have been TTing way more than I should have been. I've been doing it for quick turnaround on PED. That's my fault, and I'm hurting myself for doing so. I probably could have made PED over the last 6 months if I had been paying more attention and spending more time on the auction house. And that's really my fault. It is. And realistically, I should be doing more to use the platform the way it was designed to be used rather than just trying to play it like a game. So I'm gonna throw that back on myself, and I'm gonna admit to that, and that's why I've lost so much ground. Do I still think I would have been losing ground? But when you play this aggressively, when you hunt aggressively, and you're going for when you play aggressively, you're really going for skill ups, right? That's what you're going for. And if you're going for straight skill increases, you're going to lose ground because the PED you put in, a percentage of that comes back to you as skills, not as loot. And that's why your PED card dwindles down over time. When you flip the script and you're doing it for eco or you're doing it for profit, you hunt differently. You act differently. You're less aggressive. And you pay more attention to things. And so if you have a longer turnaround on the sale of an item, it's not going to negatively impact you. And it occurs to me that that's what I need to do. Like, I've been out here for the last month doing pretty much nothing but hunting Panleons. Why? Because it's a lot more eco, which I've argued against eco in the past, but I'm starting to look at the whole picture and realizing where I've made some mistakes. I don't think that when you're hunting at your level, hunting for eco makes no sense. Because that's not the goal of hunting at level. When you're hunting at level or slightly above your level, which you can do, the purpose of hunting at that level is not to profit. The purpose of that is to skill up. And you've got to accept the sacrifices that come with going for that particular goal. That's what's going to happen. Your PED card is going to go down, period. You might get lucky. You might get those big globals, which is what most people rely upon, is the global to sustain them. And to a certain extent, it will. This is why doing the mayhems often puts people in okay positions because they are going after the globals, and the mayhems have a good loot table because all they give you is shrapnel. And you're usually okay. You still end up burning quite a bit in repair bill, but it's a trade-off, right? On the flip side, when you're down here hunting Panleons, and I would argue if you do the practice, because when you go and do mayhem practice, you can have up to 4 people, but you're not limited by your level, right? So when you do competition mayhems, you can only hunt at your level. You can't hunt lower level. When you go and do practice mayhems, you can hunt at any level. And so what you could do is if you could go into mayhem practice and use it for farming, which I have done. And for the most part, it actually works out pretty well. But it's still, because the minimum level is already elevated, it's not necessarily the most profitable overall. It's not the most efficient. I've noticed with my relatively high looter professions compared to this particular mob, my successes with these mobs are a lot better relative to what they would have been as a beginner. Or maybe I'm just paying more attention to it now because I know what to look for, which I'm entirely on board with accepting. If that's the case, then that's the case. That's just life, right? But overall, I think this to be the case. And this is why I also go and hunt drones at Orthos, because one, they shoot guns, which increases my dodge, which is, like most players, relatively low compared to, say, my evade. But also because all they do is drop shrapnel, oil, and guns. That's it. Oh, and amps, the B101 amp, which makes this gun actually quite a bit more efficient. Like, that 5% boost doesn't sound like a lot, but it matters. Speaking of which, I'm sitting on a metric shit ton of Rubios back on Calypso. I should probably sell them to somebody. Now, carny barking isn't the easiest thing to do, but you can't sell something like a Rubio on the auction house. I kind of wish I did have a shop. And I wish they would put shops near a place like Icarus, where you could buy the shop and you could put beginner shit out there. I'm not going to spend like $3 grand on a shop to sell guns that go for 12 pack. I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. But a person could. They could make quite a bit. You drop those Rubios in there, and they're up for people to purchase, and you're not stuck carny barking all the time. Players buy the gun. But no, I do find that the efficiency of hunting at this level is very interesting, and I enjoy it. I also enjoy that I can be completely low-key about it. Like, I can set myself to sweating and do something else. Like, watch a show, catch up on news. I've actually set myself to sweating one of these mobs and had to run down and do something, come back, just as I'm finishing off the amount of sweat the mob has. And, I mean, in a previous video, I used to think I was making 1,000 sweat per hour, and I realized I was told that was not possible. And I thought, no, that must be my efficiency rating. And then I come back and I'm actually paying attention to how much sweat I'm getting. I'm like, oh, no. The reason it felt like that is because I'm doing something and I'm not paying attention to the clock. I'm making about 1,000 sweat a night. And we're talking 3 or 4 hours of sweating, where I'm actually like watching an anime or Star Trek, or I'm watching YouTube, catching up on local news, doing all these things. So my time, the attention that you pay to time matters when it comes to looking at what you're doing and how much you're accomplishing. And Lore Spade really nailed it on the head to a certain extent. You're gonna make more money working a minimum wage job and then depoting it, as opposed to sweating the mobs. But there are some advantages you get by sweating the mobs. One, I can do something else while I'm doing it. I'm not stuck just paying attention to the screen. And that's important because it allows me to multitask in a way that you can actually multitask, and I get to reclaim my time, right? So when you're working, say, a minimum wage job, you'd have to be focused 100% on the job. Yeah, you're making like 100 times more, so that's fair. But here, I can just passively do it. Right, I just like, okay, now it's your turn. Grab the Panleon, sweat the mob, go do the other thing. Keep one eye on the screen. Oh, I ran out of sweat, or it ran out of sweat. Shoot the mob, loot the mob, rinse, repeat. Whoop, no. Have it. If I had been smart, I could have at least collected the bottles, but that's okay. Pyron PBR 10. BLP rifle. 100 ped. Ugh. It is only 28.8%. Why would you use this weapon? Rocktropia weapons with 0% efficiency. No. Screw that. High efficiency weapons means you're spending less money. And that's something you really want to keep an eye on is, what is the efficiency of the weapon you're using? And for me, it has to be above 50%, which I think Buchan's is like 55? 57.5 with the amp I've got on it, which is a scope, which I've always found to be nice. Which is also a skill mod percentage, ups the skill mod a little bit. I don't know if I've never put a laser sight on it, although I understand that has a benefit to it as well. I don't know. I've never bothered to do so. I know that there's the Barbarella that you can get out of the web shop that is actually better than Buchan's spare rifle in a lot of ways. I've never wanted to spend the dosh on the starter pack. I've just never seen it. Like, you get the gun, and you get the car, and you get the armor that I really don't need, and you get a whole bunch of ammo. And that's all cool, right? The majority of it is ammo. But when you do that, you really do it for the gun and the car. The armor is no different than the TT armor overall. It might be a little bit better, but I've got ghost armor. I don't need that. And if I do need lighter armor for hunting slightly higher level, I've got the Tyrellian stuff. But the Barbarella is a relatively high efficiency starter gun. And it comes with the 2 amps if you buy the full pack. And so that is a thing. And you get the skill, I guess they give you skill chips too, which I'm not into. I mean, at this point, it's going to be a very minor increase for me, right? I'm level 45. I've done the things. I grounded up. So the starter skills that they would have given you, it's probably like a ped worth in each category. That's not going to impact my skills in any meaningful way at this point. But still, it's the principle of the idea. But I have considered going to the web shop and purchasing the starter pack just for the sake of getting the Barbarella. Because it is a more... you get the amps, and it's a more efficient gun overall from what I'm given to understand. The Z12. And that would make swenting like this just a little bit more efficient. Which means I'm... Sorry, allergies. Which means that I'm doing less work over the long haul, which is really what this is all about. See, what I'm doing now is I'm sweating mobs, and then I sell the sweat. I'll bring the sweat back to Calypso. I hope to avoid any pirates. That's okay. We've got smuggling routes. Or I could sell it here, although the need for sweat on Cyrene is much lower. Or I could go to Arcadia and sell it there. Actually, I think it would just be safer for me to hitch a ride on the Normandy. That might happen. Just have to time that out. Just got to time that out. Anyway, because no one fucks with the Normandy. And actually, it jumps between safe zones, so... Even if you could fuck with the Normandy, you wouldn't be able to fuck with them. Oh, where was I? Oh. On Arcadia, if you've got 10,000 sweat, you can sell it as a passport pack, right? Because that's what it takes to get the passport. You can just be like, passport pack 10 ped or 11 ped, and people will buy it. And I believe there's a need for sweat on next island now with the Gorgon armor quests. And I don't know the whole story behind that. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more, maybe ask around. But there is a market for sweat again, and people are actually buying sweat, and I think that the resellers are realizing that they have to increase the amount that they're paying the sweaters, because I'm seeing the price of sweat go up again. Or at least it was the last time I was on Calypso. I was seeing sweat selling for like 1.2 per K again for the first time in almost a year. And that's good. It really needs to be higher than, because it was as low as 85 pek per K. And sweating is already a thankless task that doesn't get much out of it. It's insulting to offer what some of these resellers were offering the sweaters. And I understand that market forces sometimes work that way, but I also understand that the sweat resellers were manipulating the market. See, that's one of the benefits to living a life where you're dealing with money all the time. You get to recognize the difference between, oh, this is natural market forces, and oh, this is a dick that's trying to change things so they don't have to pay as much. So yeah, and that's the downside to having a completely unregulated market, is that you do have people who will manipulate the market. I mean, overall, I think that it's more efficient when it's not regulated. I mean, Entropia has really shown what an almost completely unregulated market will do. And very naturally, prices of items go up and down along the supply and demand curve. And this is a good thing. This is the way that it works. This is nature. But it also gives a good example of how people can manipulate the market and negatively impact prices to their own advantage, using arbitrage and other means to make a profit. And I understand where there's a negative impact to that. So, you know, I may not want it to change for the most part. It doesn't mean I'm not going to bitch about the problems. It's human nature. We're kind of geared toward bitching about things. Because there's always ways for people to naturally shift the course. They just have to have the will. You know, you can negotiate better prices and stuff like that. It's all a matter of making that work. You can form corporations and say, no, we won't sell below this price. And I know in Entropia it doesn't have a good way of keeping people honest. Like in real life, you've got law that makes it so that when a corporation has an employee and the employee does the job for a set value that they agreed to with their employer, and then the employer then sells the they aggregate all the products, the widgets made by the employees, or after all of the, in a production line when it's all done, the finished product as it's moved from employee to employee to make. But in this case, you'd have to do it more like a piecework type deal where each employee gathers the widget, because you're farming basically, and then you compile all the widgets, then you sell the widgets, and everyone gets a share of it, kind of like a cooperative farm, or some of the early corporations where everyone would do piecework. It'd all go in, they make their salary, or in some cases, once the product's sold, they make a commission on it. In fact, that's how I work. I'm a salesperson. I make commission. I only make commission off my production. The more I produce, the more money I make. But the corporation makes it so that the price stays at a value that's worthwhile to sell it at, so that I can actually live. And that's I think that there's a lot of opportunity in Entropia for players to gather together and do stuff like that. On the same token, though, there's no way to regulate it. So, like, if I did something that amounted to screwing somebody, I'd go to jail, because that would be illegal. Entropia doesn't have that. MindArc does not enforce any form of in-game legal system. It is truly unregulated, so a player could screw other players out of their share of things, or if they could steal the money and just walk off with it. That's happened in EVE a couple of times. There's a couple of... If you look up the article from Cracked.com, and it's the 10 biggest dick moves in gaming, there was a guy in EVE Online who spent years building up this big financial concern, right? Was considered one of the most reputable in-game financial concerns in existence. Had actually, I think he had hundreds of thousands of US dollars in assets. If you use the ISK to USD conversion rate, where they have that other token, I can't remember the name of it right now, that you can buy ISK with. He built it up over like 2 years, and then one day gathers everything into the biggest ship and then fucks off to some corner of space, and no one ever saw him again. You know, that was almost as holy crap as when the Assassin's Guild took out an entire corporation overnight by infiltrating it over the course of like a year and a half and making it to like the number 2 spot in the corporation. And then they murdered the CEO twice and stole all the assets of the company. I'm like, oh my god. I read that and my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't even know that was possible. But it is. And the same thing could happen in EU, which is why I'm not surprised that most players don't really go for that. I mean, the biggest corporate success story in Entropia Universe is Big Industries. Big Industries owns a huge swath of Calypso. They have all kinds of programs. They do a lot, right? And it's 4 guys. 4 guys worldwide control this big concern. And I know at least some of them make their whole living off of big industries, which means they live their life off of Entropia Universe. This is verified. I don't know if all of them do. I'm sure all of them could. But I know at least a couple of them do. You know, and they're probably not uber wealthy, relatively speaking, but they ain't hurting for money. You know what I'm saying? So it can be done. One just has to have the courage and find people who are honestly trustworthy. And they are out there. There are a lot of them. It just takes time. It takes time, build a reputation. I mean, another good example of this is Titans of Space. You know, they're a giant concern here in Entropia Universe, and they do a lot of good. And, I mean, you can just watch Bonnie's stream to know how well they're doing. Because I don't think any of them are hurting either. And I don't know their whole business model, or if they're even technically a business. I think that they do charge for most of their flights, except when they do the specialty. And they have partnerships with the devs. They do those big events once a month. So there's that too. But where you go on this platform is 110% up to you. 110%. And I think that's a good thing. And I like how they give you the opportunity to do these strange and crazy things like make a whole living off a video game. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, 1 subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. As always, everyone, I appreciate the support, and thank you to my patrons. We'll see you in the next one.